Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. We're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Wednesday. It is January the 15th. We are rolling through this new year, and we are getting started in the politics sphere, I suppose, because the confirmation hearings have begun. Yesterday, we had chirping, shrill Democrat ladies trying to tell a man who's better looking than they can handle about his hypocrisies in life, ignoring their own, ignoring those of their colleagues. And I have to imagine that Pete Hegseth was probably thinking, I would much prefer enhanced interrogation tactics. Just waterboard me instead of this. There's nothing worse than hearing a bunch of these shrill harpies kind of chirping in your ear about things that they can't keep up with. But he did get some funny one-liners in. I think we're going to peel back just a little bit of this. These have always been kind of a sham. And I've got some evidence going back a long ways, including a little cut from our former, whatever you want to call him, the current president, that is the former senator who used to think this was an opportunity for him to just sort of parade his intelligence. These have always been dumb. So we're going to talk about all that. That's the biggest piece of it. A little bit more DEI going on out in California. You'd think they'd learn their lesson. You'd think that they would say, look, this isn't working, whatever we're trying, but they're not going to do that. So they're doubling down on stupid out there. And a couple of interesting things that we kind of tipped you off to up front, including what the LA Times owner has to say about their former endorsement. All right, before we get too deep into the weeds, and we will get there very shortly, we're going to get started like we do here all the time. Kyle Seraphin Show, we're going to get there started with a little cup of coffee. And you guys can get yours at blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. And we're going to tell you, Blackout Coffee, they're a company shaking up the coffee world. They're not a typical run-of-the-mill corporate brew giant. They're not a Starbucks that hates your values. Forget about sharing it. Blackout Coffee is bold, unapologetic, and America first. A lot like you. In fact, you guys first told me about Blackout Coffee. In the month of January, you can make it easier than ever to get yourself hooked up. And, you know, it's one of those daily luxuries that you might want to afford yourself. Amazing coffee, cocoa, tea, whatever it is that you ingest that gets your day started out right. Blackout Coffee running a sale this month. It's about 20% off on most of the items that I've seen using promo code KYLE. Whether it's a bag of premium roasted coffee, whether you're into getting some hot cocoa because you're a sugar person in the morning, or whether you're have a little bit more affectation like our British friends and you want to start the day off with a specialty tea. You can find that at blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. You can always find their gear if you want to sport it around the office or while you're working in the yard. Mugs, t-shirts, etc. Designed to make a statement because just getting the coffee may not be enough. You may want it to look as good as it tastes on your body. blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. Go ahead and go there right now. Let's jump into some of this crazy chaos. All right, so I got to apologize right up front because when I say enhanced interrogation techniques, most of you are thinking about a towel on the face, someone with a pitcher of water over, you're leaned back, and they're going to make you experience a near drowning sort of simulation. And that sounds pretty bad. But as someone who's been drowned almost every day for 100 days in a row when I went through the PJ Indock, and there's my little, that actually is my snorkel. For some of you who don't know what's sitting over my shoulder on the left-hand side of the wall here, that's the dive mask that I wore in dive school. Sorry, U.S. Air Force. That is one of the actual fins that I wore in the Indock, and the actual snorkel that I used, which still has my name on it on the little piece of tape. It's no worse for wear. It's pretty ugly. I've been drowned a bunch, and actually I think it would be preferable to the thing that Pete Hegseth got subjected to. It's really ugly what these people do. So I've got a little taste of it, and I'm going to apologize up front because if you're just listening, you don't get the full effect. But I want you to close your eyes if you're listening and picture the man in the middle is the nominee for the Secretary of Defense, and he looks overwhelmed by just boredom and stupidity. And surrounding him are some of the worst females in our federal system. You have Kirsten Gillibrand, you've got Elizabeth Warren, you have Mazie Hirono, you have Tammy Duckworth, just a bunch of chirping harpies. And this is probably what his hearing sounded like when he went to sleep at night. This is what I imagine he had to kind of try to shut out. And you know what? For a guy who agreed not to take a drink while doing this job, someone deserves a drink if you put up with this.
Are you willing to support our veterans organizations that will help our veterans get every damn thing that they deserve because they signed on the dotted line to keep us safe, just like
Yuck. Really? Who are these people and why do they feel like they can do this? It got even worse, and so I'm going to share with you some maybe lowlights, I guess, of what this looks like. This is coming from my friends over at Catholic Vote. Confirmation hearing. Senator Tim Kaine, you'll remember him, or you won't remember him, like most Democrats do not. He was the running mate of Hillary Clinton. He brings up Pete Hegseth's 7-year-old daughter in order to attack the man, because nothing is out of reach when it comes to trying to shame someone for a moral situation that they don't embrace. We did actually get kind of an unlikely voice of reason coming out of Oklahoma, and that shouldn't surprise those of you who know anything about Oklahoma, went to school there. People from Oklahoma tend to be right down the middle in America. They just they're right there on 35, cuts right through the state, and they have kind of an old-fashioned sense of things that make sense to normal people. In any case, the Senate met on Monday for the confirmation hearing of Pete Hegseth, the President-elect Donald Trump's pick for the next Secretary of Defense. He is nominated he's a retired Army National Guard officer. He's a former Fox News host. So all these things we know. And you got Tim Kaine, Democrat, Virginia, my former senator, decided to bring up his relationship history and his family because nothing's out of bounds for these people. These are the same people that told us that, Joe Biden is totally fine for showering with his daughter, and his son, who was running around the world collecting bags of cash, not a problem. Bill Clinton, right? Can we just agree that Democrats, they only are interested in morality to shame people who actually have a sense of shame, but they don't have it themselves? That seems to be pretty evident to me. Here's a little taste of how ugly that got. This is Tim Kaine talking about the oath of office, attempting to bring something in that I don't think has anything to do with whether or not the guy is qualified to do the job. How many people have to go through a morality check to get into politics, particularly on the Democrat side?
You've taken an oath like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
In final,
I mean, yeah, let's do that. And then so he didn't end there. Obviously, he decided to go and tackle, like I said, a 7-year-old girl. So this is particularly ugly stuff, even for someone who's a Democrat. I don't know where they think that they can stand on this moral high horse based on the folks in their party. Corruption exists on both sides of the aisle. But isn't this the same Senate that had some Senate staffer like spread eagle and getting plugged on the table the other day? Did we ever figure out who that guy was, or who he worked for, or who let him in, or whose ID badge? Yeah, it's like, just spare me with the moral outrage, if you would. Here's Tim Kaine going after a child.
Completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared? How is that a complete clear?
Senator, her child's name is Gwendolyn Hope Hegseth, And she's a child of God, and she's 7 years old.
And she
I'm
was,
glad
and
she's here.
you cheated on the mother of that child less than 2 months after that daughter was born, didn't you?
Those were false charges.
Well,
It
no,
was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And
Okay, let's be really clear about it, because morally speaking, there's nothing good about cheating on your wife at all. There's nothing acceptable about it. It also has nothing to do with doing the job of Secretary of Defense. The only question that this would be relevant in the context of is a security clearance. Are you safe being entrusted with the highest level secrets of the federal government? And if you guys listen to this program, or if you haven't before, you should check out my friend George Hill. And he's available on X. He puts out a lot of hot takes over there. It's at Senior Chief EXW. And George Hill tells me of a time when they used to actually add this to the interview for the security clearance process. There was a moment in time when the federal government would ask you about marital infidelity, but not for the sake of deciding whether or not you were going to cheat on your wife or not, or husband. That wasn't relevant. It was relevant in terms of blackmail material. Could you be leaned on by a foreign power or a non-governmental actor in order to exploit your weakness? Could they get you to share information that you would otherwise not because of shame? That's the only reason that this comes into play. It's the only necessary qualification. Yes, should you be a good and moral person? I would hope so. Do people make mistakes all the time? Yes. Do we know people that we love that have done those things? I'm sure of it. Absolutely. And do we think that the people in the Senate chambers are really the ones that can sit in judgment? No. So the only thing that's relevant when they decide whether or not this person has the ability to protect the secrets and be entrusted with this position, it's very straightforward. Can some foreign power manipulate this information, and can they use it against you and exploit your willingness to hide it by asking for information and taking things from you? Is it a weakness or a vulnerability in the counterintelligence sense? And the fact of the matter is, it's public. It's been public. It's been reported to the police. It's been reported on every mainstream media outlet right now. They're running with it hard and fast on the left. So this has already been exposed. His life, for whatever it was worth, and you got to respect the man for just knowing what he was going to get into, because clearly he's not a saint. And he decided to step into the arena anyway. So good for him. Honestly, it is a really, really hard thing to think that your skeletons are going to be turned out of the closet and paraded out in front of you by a bunch of self-righteous turds. Let's have a little breather and kind of like a little bit of a laugh about this. One of the dumbest people in Congress constantly attempting to get to that level is a woman named Mazie Hirono. She is the senator from Hawaii. I do not know why Hawaiians continue to elect her. There must be something. I don't much like Hawaii. If you guys don't know this about me already, I just don't like the state. I don't like the way that their politics operate. It's very provincial. It feels like going to another country. It doesn't operate like most places. And Mazie Hirono is kind of like one of those examples of you're like, who on earth thought this was the best rep for anyone there, whether it be the wealthy libs or whether it be the Hawaiian types? There's some mediocrity that just permeates Hawaiian government at the local and the state level, and obviously here even at the federal level. This may or may not be a real recording, but it does do the thing that my sophomore English teacher taught us when I was in a literature class, that literature is what happens. So whether this is real or not, and you guys can debate that in the chat, you guys can debate that in the comments below, whether it's real or not, I think it's true. This is the actual thing going on in Mazie Hirono's brain. Enjoy a little bit of weird questioning. And again, he just turned this back on its head like it needs to be done.
Mr. Hegseth, are you attracted to obese Hawaiian women with a below normal IQ?
no, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, are you aware that I used the potty all by myself today?
No, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, you seem to be pretty fertile. If confirmed, would you commit to putting a baby in me?
No, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, are you saying under oath that you refuse to impregnate a portly Hawaiian retarded woman, even if she can use the potty all by herself?
Did he really turn her down? Was that real? If you're listening in the audio and you can't see this, it's really, really good AI. And it's very silly. That's about how Mazie Hirono operates. My new favorite senator right now, by the way, because I don't much care for a lot of them, my new favorite senator, I think, has to be John Fetterman. The stroke turnaround is amazing. And he's taking this with the appropriate level. I think, we didn't see any of the good question clips come out from his time, and maybe he'll have some cool sound bites later for all of you in the chat that don't get it. Yes, we're just spoofing with you. That's a Mazie Hirono spoof, but it's so accurate and it's so much like what we think she might actually say. It's disturbing. Here's a man that actually gets it. The other day, he came out of his office and he's ambushed because he was going to go down to Mar-a-Lago and he was going to talk to Donald Trump, which makes a lot of sense. If you're a senator and you come from kind of a purpley area or a place that has a lot of blue collar working class people that voted for the man, and you want to represent your constituents well, you might go talk to Donald Trump. And the media sort of lost their mind over this. So here is John Fetterman making an outrageous claim, which is exactly as serious as most of this stuff ends up being. And I'm going to show you a real clip, not a spoof clip, right after that of our favorite. But here he is. He's stepping out of his office. He gets ambushed, interviewed about Greenland. It's like, this is the right amount of seriousness for these clowns.
Hey, Senator. Yeah. Can we ask you what you hope to get out of your visit to Mar-a-Lago to talk to Donald Trump?
What are we talking about here? Is there some news?
There's some news. We hear that you're going to be heading down to Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yes, I've heard that. Yeah.
What will you be discussing with the president?
Well, yeah, I demand that I need to be made Pope of Greenland.
Do you have the resume to be Pope?
I'm having a conversation like he's the president is going to be. So, I am not the senator for just Democrats in Pennsylvania. I'm everyone's senator in Pennsylvania. And so it's just having a conversation with the president.
He's just having a conversation with the president-elect. Isn't that a normal thought? It reminds me, because I went back and started looking at who are the former secretaries of defense and how eminently qualified might they be. By the way, if you go to the defense.gov website and you go look for Lloyd Austin's bio, the current SecDef, it's just blank. There's just nothing in it, which is really weird. I don't know why they didn't put that in. It's probably because it's kind of embarrassing, because if you went and looked at it right now, you'd find out that he stepped off the board of Raytheon and did a bunch of other kind of things. So the classic story is like, are you not the representative of all the people in your state? And do you only represent the people from your political party? If that is the case, then you are a party over your actual purpose in the government. Now, let me get this like real clear too. I actually think that senators should be representing only the majorities in the state houses. But we changed that over 100 years ago, so we'll just deal with it. Right now, they are elected in a certain way, and that way is by popular vote, and that popular vote means that whoever's in your state is the one who should be telling you. They're your constituents too. So leave him alone. Let him just go ask some simple questions. In the meantime, you've got you've got gals like Elizabeth Warren, who didn't used to be this dumb, who didn't used to set her up for pathetic gotcha questions where she actually gets owned by her own statement, as told by the laughing that happens in the back of this track. That is not a laugh track that is added. I'm going to play it for you. But the fact of the matter is, within the last 20 years, Liz Warren has strayed from reasonable person on the left that didn't agree with things on policy to partisan hack clown who tries to do gotcha questions by someone who's smarter and younger than her and gets owned and then gets laughed at in her own gallery. So here, this is what it looks like.
In other words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. You're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one, let us just be clear, in charge of the generals.
He'll be in charge of the generals. Why do they all sound like that? They all sound like Merrick Garland. They all sound like old ladies. I sort of understand it from the Liz Warren perspective, but they actually all sound like that. You know who even sounds like that? Matthew Graves. Matthew Graves is the attorney. He's the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, which is a really dumb name, the DDC. But Matthew Graves is the guy that's been running all the J6 prosecutions. and they did this exit interview with him, they all have the same sound. And I don't know where this comes from. I don't know where leftist men have decided that femininity is the thing that they should achieve with their voices, but they're doing it. They all kind of sound like Liz Warren to me. Here's Matthew Graves being interviewed by News 4, local in DC. This is an NBC affiliate, from what I can tell. There's a peacock on the screen. And listen to his tone of voice. He's also kind of lamenting the fact that he's going to be remembered for doing something dirty. All of this January, we've been kind of covering down on some of these stories of J6ers. We covered the story of Alpha Luna yesterday on purpose because people were attacking him, and I think his story is very compelling. Listen, can I just make this argument more broadly? This is the idea that they just don't have any scruples whatsoever. The people that were upset about whether or not the guy is a quote-unquote true J6er, because that was something that happened. The social media atmosphere was erupting, going after Alfredo Luna. The fact of the matter is his story shows you something very, very ugly. That all the normal sort of stopgaps, all the normal liberal positions, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, leave us alone so we could do whatever weird things we want to do, stay out of our business. That's a kind of liberal position. It's about freedom. The ACLU used to back it up. You're allowed to say what you want. The crazy thing is that Luna's story shows you that he was targeted by the FBI. And yeah, it was probably in conjunction with what was going on in his local department. That was the whole point. They took an opportunistic approach to what was happening in his local department where he had just won a court case. They went after him for freaking tweets. And the FBI helped come in there under a domestic extremism banner. And they went after someone who didn't show up to Washington, D.C. They took advantage of a moment in time when Americans were like a little bit more sympathetic, or they were so distracted by what happened with the Capitol riot that they were able to go out there and serve a search warrant at his house. And then 6 days later, they got him on a weapons charge. This is the constructive parallel, the parallel construction that we talk about here. If you use national security means to go do something, and then you find an underlying crime, state or local or federal, and you go after and use that, that's weaponized government. That is abuse of our Bill of Rights. It is saying that even though you shouldn't have been there in the first place, you're able to go out there and build criminal cases on somebody. Matthew Graves is a great example of someone who did just that. And again, I don't know where it comes from, but this feminized presentation, it's ubiquitous against these people. Listen to this guy talk. And I'm telling you, listen and picture Merrick Garland saying it, a younger Merrick Garland.
After a little more than 3 years as D.C.'s U.S. attorney, we sat down with Matt Graves just 3 days before he leaves office.
Honor of a lifetime to hold this job.
Graves would love to focus on the fact D.C. crime dropped 35% last year, could be down even more this year.
We are seeing substantial reductions in our total violent crime numbers compared to this point last year.
But he knows there's a lot more to talk about at the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. On his watch, the office oversaw charges against nearly 1,600 people accused of crimes connected to the January 6th insurrection. Declining to charge, he's quick to note, 400 others who were on Capitol grounds that day but didn't enter the building. President-elect Trump has promised early pardons to those he's called hostages.
First day.
First day.
Yeah.
Graves, not surprisingly, doesn't agree.
I do not believe that anyone deserves a pardon, and I don't think that should be surprising.
Over the weekend on Fox News Sunday, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance suggested Trump-era J6 pardons would be evaluated depending on the type of crime.
If you protested peacefully on January the 6th and you've had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned.
Asked about Vance's.
That's a totally reasonable perspective, by the way, and you would think that liberals would actually get behind it. It's like, look, yeah, this was a little bit overblown. No, they can't do that. And a lot of it comes from this media environment we're in right now where they just keep saying things that are completely absurd. Did you catch that the local news there in D.C. refers to as an insurrection? Did you notice that Donald Trump was not charged with insurrection, nor was anybody else? It continues to be the case. This is the reason why this injustice cannot stand. And it's the reason why the hypocrisy continues to just gnaw at some of us, particularly in the middle of these silly show trials. And that's what they are. The hearings have turned into show trials. They're not objective job interviews for, qualifications. They're an opportunity to score points like Liz Warren tried to do, where you're going to just dunk on the guy in front of you or the woman that has been nominated, and you're going to try to make something happen so that it just moves the needle. And then you end up with headlines like laughter erupts during the Senate hearing as Pete Hegseth quips about his military service because Elizabeth Warren doesn't know he wasn't a general. At the end of the day, he said something that made perfect sense. He said that women should have to fill the same physical qualifications to be in combat, which, by the way, I think every man could stand behind. The fact of the matter is that women don't. They don't have to do that. So this is him softening. This is how he gets Joni Ernst to get on his side, because she's a military veteran. Women, I don't want you in combat because I know what women can and cannot carry. And the number of women that can physically carry a guy my size, let alone the guys that I had to carry. You know, my dive buddy was 6'9" and weighed a little over 200 pounds. My partner, working through a number of selections, his first name is Matt. Matty was like 6'5" and 265. He was a monster. He would block out the doorway when he walked into the bathroom, and you would look over and just be like, you would just have a shadow on you. If you can't pick up a 265-pound man with some of his combat kit on, he's going to be 300 pounds easy. He's got a weapon. He's got a combat load. He's got his body armor on and a helmet. Can you pick up 300 pounds on your back and move with it? It sucks for me, and I'm fairly strong for a little guy. I'm just not that tall. I'm built like an ant, I guess. Can we just be realistic that women don't know how to do that because their bone structure is not built for it? And look, even the Army acknowledges this nonsense. I just pulled this off the Army's website like just a second ago. We don't care if the standards are the same, but the standards aren't the same. You guys can tell me if this is an old Army scale. It was the first thing that popped up, and I didn't look into it too much because I don't care about Army fitness standards. I do know for a fact that the FBI looks at women differently in a physical sense, and so did all the military branches I've ever seen. So I don't think this is wrong, that women get points for lifting less than men, and not like a little bit less, like a substantial amount less. That they get 100 points for doing a deadlift at 210 pounds. I can do that with one hand, you know? And men have to get up to 340. That becomes a little bit more significant. The fact of the matter is that men and women are not created equal. Let's just be real. Why would that be the case? Why would that even be a little bit of a conflict? And so he's out here just trying to defend rational thoughts that 20 years ago would have been absurd to have in the public square. The fact of the matter is these things have been show trials for quite a long time, and they go back at least to Clarence Thomas. Like, people always thought that Brett Kavanaugh's experience was unique. It's not. The people who've been driving this are these goofy Democrats. And it really is, like, it's not a Democrat or Republican thing for me, generally speaking, but it's all one side that is just trying to do stupid, chirpy nonsense. And it makes me kind of sick that this is where they go from it, and especially if they're going to be attacking kids. I'm going to break away for just a second before we get into some other stuff. I do have some more kind of fun. Again, like I said, the standards for me, but not for my team. I just wanted to be pushed on you. I'm only going to try to shame you because you're the only people that have any shame. It is hard to listen to, especially in light of a Joe Biden presidency and all the things that have swirled around him. Let's just take a breath and just say that it's not getting any better immediately, and it certainly won't under Donald Trump in the first couple days. So, guys, it's worth saying there is a crunch time. Just because the new administration is going to be sworn in doesn't mean all the troubles will go away. If you guys want to prepare against that the way that we do, go to preparelikekyle.com. It's my Patriot supply. Yeah, they're going to swear in a new group. Hopefully we'll get the people that we want in there. Some of them are going to be unideal. But the fact is, our enemy still has days to stir up trouble. That means the inside enemy. That means the outside enemy. It could be cyber attacks. It can be invasions. It could be nuclear strikes. It could be drones. It could be all kinds of crazy stuff. The fact is when you're looking at a corrupt Washington, they are dealing with the wrong problems, and they're not our problems. So I have my Patriot supply. We have emergency food in the house. You guys should too, and you can do it. If you want to start right now, this would be a pretty good startup. It's 3-month emergency food kit with $100 off. It's got over 2,000 calories per day. It gives you the 3 whole months on that. Plenty to get you through a long emergency to kind of get started and figure out what your life looks like. It gives you a little bit of breathing room. All their stuff will last for up to 25 years. They go into these like rugged, weatherproof buckets that you can stack, which is nice. Again, the website is preparelikekyle.com. You can order that 3-month emergency food kit. We have 2 of them, as I've said here a number of times. We've got them in our house because our safety, it's like an investment. You just buy it once and you kind of forget about it. It just stacks up there in case you need it. Again, preparelikekyle.com. Can I give you my example? This is Joe Biden. Gosh, he's so bad. This is Joe Biden talking, and the most brilliant destruction of how stupid these hearings are. If you guys were to just wait for a second in unison, I'll even watch the, in fact, we'll put it on the chat. Chat, who is the best justice right now in the Supreme Court? Bar none. Because I think we all kind of agree. There's one guy that stands above the rest. Yeah, I said it's a guy because we already know that the women are not the best on there. Some of them are a little bit weak on our side, and some of them are even weaker on the other side. Who is the best Supreme Court justice if you had to pick? We're going to watch this for a sec. And then I'm going to play you a fantastic clip that I have of him doing his job. We got our first answer for Clarence Thomas. Of course, it's going to be the same. Here's CT Clarence Thomas devastating the stupidity of Joe Biden prior to his time as president. Like I said, he was always kind of a hack leading this charge.
Good morning, Judge. Welcome to the blinding lights. Just want to make sure we all know what we're talking about here, that you and I know at least what we're talking about here.
Senator Biden was very focused on natural law. How did that go?
Who knows? I have no idea what he was talking about.
Now, again, that may be lost on all the people. You know and I know what we're talking about.
I have to be perfectly honest with you. You sit there and you have no idea what they are talking about. All I know is that he was asking me these questions about natural law.
Or you may, like many argue, not apply it at all. But it is a fundamental question that is going to be almost impossible for non-lawyers to grasp in an exchange. But you know and I know it is a big, big deal. And in conclusion,
one of the things you do in hearings is you have to sit there and look attentively at people you know have no idea what they're talking about.
I don't know why I like it so much, but Joe Biden clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. He gets completely dismantled after the fact, and he just said I had to sit there and listen to these idiots talk. It's so true. And they're terrible, right? So here's a little example. This is, like I said, an unlikely voice of sanity, or maybe more likely if you actually pay attention to what goes on with people in Oklahoma. This is Mark Wayne Mullen, and he's kind of a scrappy guy. We've covered him before on some other things. He just brings out the liberal hypocrisy. There's no other way to explain it. And so here he goes. He's going to enter some of this stuff in and just call some of these clowns out. And then I'm going to show you how this was covered, because it is relevant what the other side is feeding into on the media space.
Objection. There's a lot of talk going about talking about qualifications and then about us hiring him if we are the board. But there's a lot of senators here I wouldn't have on my board. Because there is no qualifications except your age, and you got to be living in the state and you're a citizen of the United States to be a senator. Other than the fact we got to convince a lot of people to vote for us. And then when we start talking about qualifications for if you're qualified for it, could the chairman tell me what the qualifications are for the Secretary of Defense? Mr. Chairman, could you tell me what the qualifications are for the Secretary of Defense?
I'd be happy
I'll read
for
it.
you to do that. Yeah.
Let me.
I'd be happy. So listen, this is a really key point here, because this is why these are show trials, and this is why they don't make any sense and why they don't matter. Mullen just said very specifically that there are only a very small number of requirements under the Constitution, which is the job description for a senator. It's basically age, and then you got to get the votes now because they've changed the law. Because we had an amendment that changed the rules of it. It used to be you just got appointed. It's an age requirement and U.S. citizenship. And that's it. And so it's relevant as these people go out there and say, well, they're creating these purity tests that are not real. They're made up. And so they're doing a non-standard based hearing because there is no standard for who can be the Secretary of Defense. Ashton Carter, under Barack Obama, 0 time in the military. I've looked at some other guys. Chuck Hagel, he was a Vietnam era vet from what I can tell. He did a tour in Vietnam. So he did like 1 term. That doesn't mean that his service was not relevant. I'm just saying, if you had some time in the military and you've had some success in an Ivy League and you've done success in media and you understand how to manage things, and maybe you also have a drink here and there, which, by the way, most of our politicians for most of our history probably have had. There's no qualification. There is no real purity test. These are made up. I'm going to let him continue.
Let me read it for you, because I Googled
I was getting some advice from my second in command.
Yeah, but I'm just making a point, because there's a lot about qualifications, and I think it's so hypocritical of senators, especially on the other side of the aisle, be talking about his qualifications, not being able to lead the secretary or be the Secretary of Defense, and yet your qualifications aren't any better. You guys aren't any more qualified to be the senator than I'm qualified to be the senator, except we're lucky enough to be here. But let me read you what the qualifications of the Secretary of Defense is, because I Googled it and went through a lot of different sites, and really it's hard to see. But in general, the U.S. Secretary of Defense position is filled by a civilian. That's it. If you have served in the U.S. Army forces And I've been in the service for, you have to be retired for at least 7 years, and Congress can weigh that. And then there's questions that the senator from Massachusetts brought up about serving on a board inside the military industry, and yet your own secretary that you all voted for, Secretary Austin, we had to vote on a waiver because he stepped off the board of Raytheon. But I guess that's okay because that's a Democrat Secretary of Defense. But you so quickly forget about that. And then Senator Kaine, or I guess I better use the senator from Virginia.
You can't call them out specifically by name. They have all these dumb rules. Okay, so sure enough, right? And so you go, oh, okay. How about this? This is how the stuff was covered. This is Caitlin Collins. He brought Mullins on because that's a good thing. They can tell that he's not the most articulate guy in the world, and he's not. You know, is he the cleanest? No. Pete Hegseth did a much better job. I'm going to give you his opening statement in a minute where he made the argument of what it should be. And by the way, he's exactly right. So just take him at his word, because you're not going to be able to uncover things. All these people do is this Oppo research where they try to find ways that they can embarrass somebody. It turns out the man has decided that there's no reason to have any shame, maybe because of the stuff that's gone on in the last 4 years, and that's what should be embarrassment from the Biden family. Here's Mullen on Caitlin Collins' show on CNN. And again, remember, this is how it's being presented. He made some pretty like stabby type accusations. How many senators show up to work drunk? He didn't bring up the senators' aides getting plugged in the Senate chambers, which also seems pretty relevant when you want to talk about moral depravity. So again, there is no standard. You got to be a U.S. citizen. Good for him. Here we go.
Microphone.
I'm just looking for qualifications. You didn't give me any qualifications. Starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have.
I mean, first off, that's a pretty serious accusation there. Do you want to name any of the senators that you're saying are drinking on the job?
No, and that's my whole point is that these senators on the other side of the aisle was trying to act like they had more morals than Pete Hegseth, and they don't. If you're going to hold someone accountable for their behavior, then hold everybody accountable. I'm not saying I'm the most moral man or the perfect individual. I'm absolutely not. I wasn't the one calling him out. But if you're going to hold someone at that standard, then hold everybody at that standard. And it's a complete hypocrisy what they were showing when they were talking about his affairs. There's multiple members of Congress that's had affairs on their wives, and that they haven't called to be stepped down. They haven't called them to step down either. And then when it talks about qualifications, what is a qualification to be the Secretary of Defense? The only qualification is you got to be a United States citizen. That's it. Other than that, it is the president's choice, and the Senate has the right to advise and consent. And he meets the qualifications to be the next Secretary of Defense.
But I was in that room today, and when you said that, I guess the thought that went through my head was, if what you're saying is true, and your colleagues do show up drinking to come to work and vote, which I think would maybe be concerning to those taxpayers who pay them, how is the bad behavior of a sitting senator a defense of someone who wants to run the
The question is how do I defend the actions of my party? Listen, we all just watched Kamala Harris spend time both as a senator and then as the vice president. Are you telling me that she didn't come out either on drugs or drinking? It's hard to believe that somebody is that weird and awkward and says things that, that strangely. The only people that we've ever seen like that is the Saturday Night Live spoof skit of that drunk girl at a party that wants to come out and try to borrow your phone when you don't want her to, or take a picture with you, or jump into your Uber car. She's in defensive mode because they're not news anchors. They're presenters of an opinion. And I wish we could do that. I almost showed you guys the video the other day. It's definitely out on social media. And I made the argument we should call them presenters the way that they do over in the UK. David Muir was standing in turnout gear with freaking safety pins, or whatever you call them, clothespins, to really snug up the turnout gear that he's standing in front of this fake burned out fire so that they can just do this like stage nonsense. Here's another little example of coverage. Again, this is CNN. This is as good as it gets in the middle. And of course, it's a Scott Jennings clip because that's the only stuff I can tolerate in long form. Listen to all of the women talking. It's all women, and they are a diverse background of women, none of whom have any experience in the thing that they're talking about, if I had to guess. How many of them have been through a basic training? Well, they are black, though, or they are Jewish, or they are, leftists, and they are journalists. This is the way that we're being presented. And there's a huge chunk of Americans that just spoon feed this stuff in. It's the only perspective they'll get. I'm going to give you a little kind of counterbalance after this.
But that he could not answer basic questions, not just gotcha questions like, would you uphold the Geneva Conventions? Would you refuse an unlawful order if the president gave you one, which did happen on.
It did happen. Yeah, it happened when Joe Biden told everybody to go get a shot. That happened. It happened in 2021. So yeah, that's a big problem. I can totally understand why you'd be upset about that. Remember, what are the qualifications to have the job? U.S. citizen, out of the military for 7 years, or by waiver of Congress. That's it. Nobody cares what sort of questions you might think are necessary. Do you have any idea how many advisors and subject matter experts exist within the Pentagon? There are thousands of them. Have you been to the Pentagon? This lady probably has not. I have. It's surrounded by people who know all kinds of stuff. If you want to know something and you didn't previously, you can snap your fingers as the SecDef and have a dozen people that are subject matter experts in both the culture and the language and the area that you're operating in, that have read the treaty and sleep with it under their pillow, because that's all they do. You don't need to be an expert to run departments. You don't have to be the most capable technologist to run Microsoft, it turns out. What you need to know how to do is run the business or be a good manager. That's what's being asked. Can you come in here and make good decisions? Will you carry out the policies of the president? The end. Why do they act like it's something and it's not? Because they're doing these fake purity tests. Here's more.
Under Trump before with Esbeth. Would you ever sic the U.S. military on American citizens? There are many examples of questions that, yes, he was very articulate and polished, and he's a TV host. That's his main qualification. I know in TV we sometimes get confused.
Why do you denigrate this man's service? I don't understand. 20 years,
Scott,
decorated,
Scott,
Ivy Leaguer. He's a TV host. Scott. That's all he is. It's not his main qualification.
That is his main.
He's a TV host.
It's his main qualification.
It is his
You're denigrating this man's
qualifies you.
Not every member who serves deserves to be in charge of the DOD.
She said his main qualification is that he's a TV host, and I'm sorry, that's just baloney.
Do you think he would have been chosen
His main
for the
qualification
job?
is that he's a warfighter, and he's going to be the closest warfighter we've ever had to the enlisted people running the Pentagon. He's decorated, he's an Ivy Leaguer, and he knows what he's doing.
Just to be clear.
So the credentialists who live in that side would normally be very, very happy to tout out this kind of stuff. Again, if you look at the people like Ashton Carter, who never had any time in the military, who was like a Rhodes Scholar and basically was kind of like a think tank type guy. He was a physics instructor of theoretical physics. What does he know about anything? Why was he in charge? Why were they okay with it? There was a big war going on at that time. Do you guys remember the GWAT? Some of us do. And again, all of these sort of like purity tests go out the window when you consider that this guy decided to get involved in politics. How did he do it? His dad got in, was in his whole life, and then was out there trading on that name. This is from Fox News. Again, a little bit of a balance here.
A Fox News alert. The Department of Justice has released special counsel David Weiss's scathing report on Hunter Biden.
In it, Weiss defends his probe that found that the president's son made millions of dollars off his last name and political connections, then failed to pay his fair share of taxes.
Peter Doocy joins us live from the White House with the latest. Hey, Peter.
And a look at recent history, we remember that the heart of President Biden's pardon of his son was that he accused the special counsel, David Weiss, of singling Hunter Biden out. Now David Weiss is saying that the president was wrong to say that. A quote from last night's report: other presidents have pardoned family members, but in doing so, none have taken the occasion as an opportunity to malign the public servants at the Department of Justice based solely on false accusations. The biggest problem the special counsel Weiss has with Hunter is that he didn't pay $1.4 million in taxes over.
It could happen to anybody, right? $1.4 million in taxes. You just owe a little bit of money, or you're Wesley Snipes and you go to jail. That could happen to you because you didn't kiss the right butts. I'm just saying. This is actually starting to swing just a little bit because stuff like this is going on in Los Angeles. Let me give you the best example of how it's playing out in LA. Before we get there, let's just say thanks to my buddies over at Shield Arms. They are building me a prototype right now, and I look forward to getting it maybe today. SHIELDARMS.com. The promo code Kyle will save you 10% site-wide. I carry their magazines every single day. If I leave my house, I'm carrying a Glock 43X like you're seeing on the screen, and I'm carrying Shield Arm magazines. I trust them because I've used them. I've spent time training with them. They make great stuff that's going to add on to the everyday Glock if you're a Glock carrier. If you're a SIG carrier and you got that going on, then, you're that. But if you happen to carry a Glock like a 43 or a 43X or a 48, if you want to carry a micro pistol, if you want to carry one of the bigger ones, and their base plates are very good too, check them out. And they're also making soft goods. And here, I actually brought mine in. It's one of my new favorite slings, which you guys can see on the screen right here. This is the Mountain Partisan sling. It's designed by a Green Beret who's a friend of mine. It is a really, really good sling. The best part I like about it is a captured tail right here, which allows you to quickly and easily size it. So I think it's superior to some of the other designs out there. Sewn in Montana, America. It literally says here, made in Montana, right on there. So they're actually making these soft goods in their own factory in Big Fork. If you guys want to check them out, again, it's Shield Arms, SHIELDARMS.com, promo code Kyle. They make the stuff that governments want to ban. We're hearing a little bit of fun stuff about how Trump might actually be interested. They're seeing some folks that are introducing bills to actually get rid of the ATF and the IRS. There's been some movement towards a little bit less government. That would be a wild move that is not on my bingo card. Status quo tends to win. So we'll go there in just a second. The reason why I think some of this stuff is actually pushing forward is because of some of these people have really abused their ability. And the fires in Los Angeles, the fires that are going on in Southern California right now are a great example of really, really wealthy people experiencing the terrible government that they voted for, including the kind of dimwits that go out there and fight on the Senate and say stupid things. And they're getting a moment where they have to say, okay, everything is burning. And then you got this lady giving a press conference. I'm only going to play a few seconds of it because it's hilarious. It's her introduction. Is this really who you want fighting fires and giving statements on it? Stand by. Here we go.
My name is Captain Jennifer Wilcox. My pronouns are she, her. I am a Caucasian female wearing a black shirt uniform with eyewear and a black hat.
What?
My name is Captain Jennifer Wilcox. My pronouns are she, her.
Are you kidding me? Like, that's the thing that you led with, is the way that you look. The Kamala Harris, like, I'm a dark colored skin lady sitting at the head of the table wearing a blue suit nonsense. We're just dealing with clown shows. And maybe that's why you get people like the owner of the Los Angeles Times. By the way, I didn't hear anybody else say it. I just knew that when I saw that the LA Times owner was critiquing Karen Bass, the communist that is a former congressperson and now the mayor of Los Angeles. Seems like a weird move, but she did it. When I saw the critique, I was like, I guarantee the the LA Times endorsed her. And now we're seeing this little statement. The guy's come out and just said, is like, hey, we got it wrong. I just want to see people move back to the middle and be able to have reasonable conversations. And imagine this, 2025, Donald Trump gets sworn in, and people that went for hardcore communist leftists in Los Angeles, California, which is a bastion of terrible ideas, are coming forward and saying, maybe people should be able to do the job. Maybe the qualifications should be looked at. Maybe we should say, hey, what's your background and your track record? And not just do the DEI game. And not just get mad at Pete Hegseth because he's had an affair, or sometimes he drinks, or he served in combat. And we don't like that because he's a masculine male who does masculine things, which is apparently what the left is saying. Listen to this little kind of like interesting walk back.
First of all, we'll accept some blame, right? So at the LA Times, we endorse Karen Bass. I think right now in front, that's a mistake, and we admit that. So I thought it was very important early on for me to come out. And I think we were one of the few to say competence matters. We got like maybe 20, 23 million views to show how that was really dear to the heart of most people, whether you're right or left. And it's an interesting thing is that maybe we should think about how we elect people on the basis of, did they actually run a job? Did they actually make a payroll? Do they understand what it is? And rather than having professional politicians whose only job is really to run for office.
Holy moly. I feel like my head is exploding. That's Patrick Soon-Shiong. He's South African, by the way, at least, but that's where his accent comes from. Obviously, he's an Asian man, but an African-American. Saying some things like, maybe you should have some competency at the job that we want to elect you to do. Maybe you should come to the table with a little bit of experience. Holy crap. Isn't that just the opposite of the DEI crowd that says it matters what your skin color looks like or who you want to sleep with? Like, that's the most important thing? Maybe it's not. Maybe your pronouns and the fact that you're wearing eyewear. Can I do the lady again? I don't know why I think it's really funny, but it really is goofy. Listen to this lady. The eyewear thing gets me. Listen.
My name is Captain Jennifer Wilcox. My pronouns are she, her. I am a Caucasian female wearing a black shirt uniform with eyewear and a black hat.
What does eyewear mean to a person that is blind? You're kind of assuming a lot there, aren't you? That seems like very ableist kind of thing to assume that they know what eyewear means. I don't even know what eyewear means. I assume she's wearing like protective goggles. Anyway, the point of this stuff is how stupid it is and how foolish these people sort of set themselves up to be. I don't know how else you can handle this kind of thing. In any case, let's go on a little bit further. As I said, some of this is moving this along, which is like the Milton Friedman argument. The government is a terrible steward of your money. And some of these people are starting to see it, even people on the left. So here's a Donald Trump, Truth Social, not dumb. He's driving people to the platform because all the journalists that want to cover Donald Trump have to go to Truth Social and sign up. Here's Trump saying, for far too long, we've relied on taxing our great people. I don't know why he capitalizes weirdly. It's like a boomer thing. Using the Internal Revenue Service. Through soft and pathetically weak trade agreements, the American economy has delivered growth and prosperity to the world while taxing ourselves. It's time for that to change. Today, I'm announcing that I will create the External Revenue Service to collect tariffs and duties and revenue that will come from foreign sources. We'll begin charging those who take money off us with trade, and they will start by paying their fair share. January 2025, the birth of the External Revenue Service, Make America Great Again. Look, I think we can all lean on that. Number one, this is clearly a troll. But in the same way that you've got Fetterman going down to Mar-a-Lago to have a conversation in a reasonable fashion, it makes perfect sense that you would just start saying things to get these people spun up. And yet, what is the point that he's making? The point is why does the world benefit from American prosperity? Why do we export our wealth? Meanwhile, there are people in this country that are actually really struggling. And some of them are veterans. It's just a thing. Okay? For all of you, hold on, let me put this on the chat thing here. You guys are mad that I said it's boomers. Have you ever seen the way that you boomers capitalize things? Some of you still write in all caps. I'm not laying off boomers. If you write weirdly in caps, and there are plenty of boomers in my life that do it, you guys do that. Go get your friends. Straighten yourselves out. I don't know why you write in caps or capitalize things like great people, which is not capitalized. It's not a proper noun. That's not an attack. That's an observation. You guys take a deep breath there. The fact is he's doing something really important, though. He's telling us that our priorities have been misaligned. We've been laying out something for the rest of the world. We're acting like we're subservient. This is a really old concept, by the way, in Western experience. It used to be called the white man's burden. It's really racist. It's this idea that because your society is quote unquote privileged or exceptional, the Brits did this, the French did this, you have to bring civility, you have to bring economic prosperity to the rest of the world because they can't do it on their own. It comes from a decidedly like egocentric and really sort of that soft bigotry of low expectations position. And if you really are a liberal person, and if you really are like egalitarian and open-minded, which these people claim to be, the left, then you wouldn't act this way. You would say that these people can stand on their own 2 feet. They don't need me to help them up. I remember hearing this as probably junior history classes. I had a privileged upbringing, and so much I had really, really good teachers growing up. Before that, they were into transing people. I had different, political beliefs that were being taught in. I was in Catholic schools, right? And I was in Catholic high schools. And they talked about the concept, which I'm sure was very inflammatory at the time, of the little brown brother and the little yellow brother, and like the sort of like paternalistic looking down on others that you saw within European cultures specifically. And America basically was like this, didn't have this attitude until we got so prosperous that we did. I've now put a quarter and now I have to ride. And now all I have are all caps from all of my boomers that like to listen in the chat. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't think you guys are the cause of most of the problems. I actually had a really interesting conversation with Ron Coleman, for whatever that's worth. And his pin of the generation that actually moved America into the current place where we're at right now. A lot of people want to blame it on the boomers. I know that even some of my friends do, and they say, "Oh, you boomers, you guys, fell asleep at the wheel and you let this happen." There's a really strong argument to be made that the so-called greatest generation, which went to war, saved democracy or whatever you want to call it in World War II, came back to the United States, put their head down and started working. They allowed all of this evil crap to grow on their watch, and they raised kids that were not interested in politics and power. So there's something to be said about this being a very old problem. I think it goes all the way back to more than 100 years ago. I continue to say it. But the idea that you would take on the sins of other nations the way that we did, like Europeans did it, and now America has reached that apex of political stability and corruption and the sort of the money and that survivor's guilt, that moment where they just look around and they go like, we have so much and there's other people that don't. So what? It's not your problem. Unless you want to be a Christian nation. Do you think we can get that sold? Where did the values come from that the political left wants to enforce? Does it come from Christian principles? You should love your neighbor as yourself, that you should do good to those who have less. You should try to love your enemies. Do you think they would get into that? Because that's my favorite thing to do. I like to radicalize people on the political left with all of that. We're dealing with a funny time. It's a funny time to be alive and watch this happen, where all of the worst ideas have hit sort of the apex of that swing, and I do think they are starting to swing back. And that's how you have the owner of a very liberal, leftist Los Angeles Times, but also a person who's a business person that wants to make money, swinging back and saying competency might matter. Donald Trump's got a real good opportunity right here. We'll bring up another little story just because it's out there. Pam Bondi is going to be the next one jumping into the barrel here. If you guys don't know, that's starting today. Pam Bondi will now get a chance to do it. Are they going to attack a woman the same way? She seems to have less of the flaws, but you got people on the political right that are like, she's a Democrat, she likes red flag laws, she doesn't like guns, blah, 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 blah. I think Pam Bondi is going to be the Pam Bondi that she needs to be for this job. We have one guy that basically stepped up. In the military, we'd call that person a shit magnet. And the guy that steps up and just took all of it, and that was Matt Gaetz. He took all the hits. He got all the attacks. They blew their load on how excited they were to try to show how awful he was. They can't stop all the picks. They cannot. They won't have the political capital to send it that much. They might be able to stop one or two, but you're not going to be able to get all of them. And I honestly think that, the fact that even that Pete Hegseth sat up there and took everything they had, did this kind of routine, listened to the enhanced interrogation tactics of just chirping harpies. Here it is again, one more time.
Yes, our veterans organizations that will help our veterans. Yes or no?
I think once you sit there and take all of that nonsense, it burns them out for the rest of it. I'm going to show you a little survey, too, that I just picked up because I thought this was fun. Sometimes you see these things on MSNBC. MSNBC, hard left, right? Here's a survey that I participated in. It said, how confident are you that Donald Trump's cabinet picks will be good for the United States? I'm mostly confident. I'm like moderately confident. And it referred to me as a balanced stance. I represent less than 7%, maybe 8% of the country that reads MSNBC and wants to vote in these polls. And by the way, the numbers on that poll were like 40,000. So not a small poll, not a huge poll either. But 91% of them are extremely not confident that Donald Trump's picks will be good for the United States. What a goofy perspective. I'm never, by the way, the normal audience for MSNBC. It just shows you the lean of the folks that are out there. And that's how you end up with these pieces. And this piece in particular was entitled, what is it? Pam Bondi is not good for the Justice Department. She can't be trusted with it. I'll have to find it real quick. It's on my screen here. There it is. Yeah. So Pam Bondi can't be trusted with the power of the justice system. We just got through Merrick Garland, folks. We just saw a guy completely weaponized against the American people that decided that he was going to entertain a political outcome. And Alpha Luna was one of them, which is why he was on the show yesterday. And many of the J6ers, whether you listen here or you know who they are, their stories are bad. It's why we're highlighting them on our weekend editions right now, our Sunday conversations. I want people to understand how dumb it was and how arbitrary and capricious. By the way, that is the underlying definition of what tyranny looks like. So if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. It's going to move on there. Serving as the nation's chief law enforcement officer requires independent and sound judgment. Yeah, we agree. It also requires competence and the ability to ingest new ideas. We agree. Competence counts. So welcome to the team. The fact of the matter is we just don't hold you in high regard when you guys are out there acting like it suddenly matters when you haven't for decades, whether it be under Barack Obama or the continuation on Joe Biden. That's where I'm at for the day. That's what I've got to say about it. I'm going to look forward to seeing what kind of attacks come at Pam Bondi because I think it'll be very interesting. I don't think that they're done with this. Oh, last little thing here. James O'Keefe just released another video, and I just want to do a little quick addressing of it. O'Keefe put out a video of a guy who was an FBI agent for 15 months, just so you guys are aware. Garrett O'Boyle was suspended for longer than that right now, almost twice as long as that guy was an FBI agent. I went without pay as an FBI agent for longer than that guy was an FBI agent. This is the resume of the person. I really wish that people over at the OMG, at the O'Keefe Media Group, would actually hire a targeting officer so they know what the hell they're doing, or at least hire someone that understands how the federal government works. If you go after this guy who self-proclaims to be a senior advisor at Booz Hamilton, he's been there for 4 years. He spent a year as an FBI agent. He spent a couple years at the State Department, and he's like 38 or 39 years old. By the way, he was also caught on one of those To Catch a Predator type sting cameras trying to have sex with an underage girl. This is not someone that is a top anything anywhere. If you didn't even make it through probation as an FBI agent, you've got some problems, the odds are pretty strong. So anyway, this is out there, but you're going to have this sensationalism. Oh, he's exposing the deep state. The guy called himself a spy hunter, for God's sake. He had the same job that I did as a counterintelligence agent. He just didn't even have it as long. And by the way, of those 15 months, 6 of them are at the academy, whatever the hell that's worth. So anyway, as you guys go out in the media environment, be a skeptic as usual. Hold these people accountable to their own principles. We'll see you guys again in the morning. Let me just go ahead and plug all the channels. Again, it's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. If you want to follow us, we appreciate that. Make sure you got the notifications on. You can follow me on X. It's at Kyle Seraphin, and the Locals channel, which continues to grow. It's KyleSeraphin.com, where we have great insight, and you will get access to our Sunday conversations on Saturday. And if you're listening on Spotify or on Apple or on iHeartRadio, we really appreciate all the downloads. Make sure you guys share that with your friends. Give us a 5-star review wherever they're at. It continues to grow, but we're well over 1,000, and I appreciate that because that came from you. Have a fantastic day. The palate cleanse is Mazzy Hirona. We're going to do it again. Should we do one more? Again, this is not real, people. I have to say this for the YouTube audience, but it is funny. Let's go out the door with this.
Mr. Hegseth, are you attracted to obese Hawaiian women with a below normal IQ?
No, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, are you aware that I used the potty all by myself today?
No, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, you seem to be pretty fertile. If confirmed, would you commit to putting a baby in me?
No, Senator.
Mr. Hegseth, are you saying under oath that you refuse to impregnate a portly Hawaiian retarded woman, even if she can use the potty all by herself?
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.